Good morning, Lagos. Thank you very much for staying tuned here on Smooth 98.1. For all those parents who have taken their children to school or your children have resumed this week, congratulations and happy school fees week. And
Yes, sir.
it's time for us to look at the news headlines for today with analysis with our guest analyst. My name is Ayo Mairese.
My name is Valentine, and welcoming Divo Korea into the studio. Hello, Divo.
Good morning, Lagos. A cool South Africa Nigeria love in question.
All right.
And shout out to Justin who joined us this morning. At Justin EJ is his Twitter handle. Good morning, Justin.
Morning, people.
Welcome.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Justin. Now, if you'd like to join the conversation as well, please go onto our various social media platforms. We have WhatsApp. You can send a message to 0809 And on Twitter, we're at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag freshlypressed981.
Our first story is from the Punch newspaper. Justin, Maynard's name disappears from watch list. 2 billion naira case dropped. A revelation from this report, according to the Punch, who dug into the recent developments surrounding Mr. Abdul Rashid Maina, who was indicted for 2.1 billion naira pension biometric scam. If you recall, he was the chairman of the defunct pension reform task team. Take us through the details of this story, Justin, highlighting the speculations as to why or how his relationship with the presidency might have led to his name being taken off the watch list.
All right. So first of all, let's specify which watch list
Mhm.
that his name has been taken off on, because he is still, according to the report, he is still listed as a wanted person on EFCC's website.
Yes.
Well, typically when the law enforcement agencies are going after someone who's a flight risk, they would put you on a no-fly risk at the international airports, i.e., you would probably be intercepted if you try to leave through the airports, and that's a very good place to detect the movement of such a person. Well, the report says that Maina's name has been taken off that no-fly lists at the international airports, and what that means in practice is that he comes and goes into the country at will. And if you cast your mind back to how the story unfolded from way back in 2016, Mena had fled to Dubai when the investigations and when he was declared wanted. But reports have it that in 2016, the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, visited with him in Dubai and allegedly made him some assurances of his safety. Subsequently, Mena came back into the country. The scandal blew up when the public found out that he had been reinstated um, at the ministry, and not only reinstated but promoted to director level without going through
Due process.
the due process of promotion exams, which is standard practice in the public service. There's I'm practically almost in tears as I'm reading this story, because this is just typical. Sadly, this is just typical of how high crimes are shielded. The crimes, the financial crimes, the malfeasance that actually does structural damage to this country is shielded by the powers that be. So Mena's case has more or less died of natural causes. Um, the report doesn't say if he's presently in the country, but sources at EFCC, based on this report, are saying that, well, they can't go after him because he's being protected by high and mighty people in the executive arm of the government. And that, my dear people, is how the Maina saga,
Mhm.
um, just like so many others before it, has fallen apart. And it's a shame, really. And this has a nexus to some other story we're going to look at. I mean, I appreciate what the FBI and EFCC working together are doing, cracking down on the internet fraudsters and scam artists that are doing some reputational damage. But I tell you that the real damage is structural and not reputational. Because my mother taught me that it doesn't really matter what people say about you as long as you know you're doing the right thing. It would be better if these young people were doing all of this, but the country was actually moving forward in getting itself organized, using our resources for development and not being frittered away into people's pockets. But it's double tragedy. It's a real double whammy when that's going on and the focus is on that, and you ignore the real things that are actually creating the conditions necessary for such petty crime and internet fraud to thrive. It's a big shame.
I'm glad you linked it because I mean the next story would naturally seem right for you to touch on this FBI list,
Yes,
especially as
so
the female arrest.
Yeah.
The arrest has been made.
yeah, so let's go straight to that story actually. It's from the Punch newspaper. Justin, I'll stay with you for this. FBI list, EFCC arrest female fraudster, 112 others. So a total of 113 people have been apprehended by the FCC, and according to this report, they are working hand in hand with the FBI. One of such a notable female is said to be on the FBI most wanted list for interesting reasons. Can you please give us details of the story?
Well, the EFCC has arrested this unnamed female, and I'm wondering why she remains unnamed. Right? There's no reason to protect her identity. If she's on FBI's most wanted list,
yeah.
then why has EFCC refused to release the name of the person? In any case, they've effected an arrest. Lady lives in Benin. Her role in the syndicate, which is what the crime ring really is to source for data which is then used to compromise people's identity in the email identity theft type of fraud. They said she receives her collaborators use the information that she sources to file for fraudulent tax returns with the Internal Revenue Service of the United States, and she receives her cut through Bitcoin. About 185 Bitcoins have been traced to her. I wonder how they did the tracing. It's the FBI. It's supposed to be
I was going to say it's the FBI,
anonymized, right? Yeah, but maybe it's a confessional, whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's been arrested along with other people. A total of 113 internet fraudsters across Edo, Ondo, and Delta states have been arrested in raids so far. They've secured 53 convictions so far. 38 exotic cars, laptops, handsets, and other items from them have all been confiscated. And over 280 suspects so far arrested for various financial crimes. Gentlemen, pay some attention to the high crimes in our society. It's killing us.
I was going to ask, thanks a lot for highlighting that, because I was going to ask that, do you think it's because of the spotlight on Nigeria and internet fraud by the FBI that has spurred them into action? Because this isn't new, but why has it become a priority with the EFCC now?
Trust me, I dare say it's not so much a priority to the EFCC as the EFCC, as much as it's the EFCC being muscled to live up to the treaties, the collaborative treaties it's signed up with international agencies like the FBI. Okay, you have a role to play, and you will play it, because if the EFCC's body language as regards more serious things happening that are within its ambit is anything to go by, they really couldn't.
I mean, for instance, in that case, I was going to ask again, do we need international pressure before we take action? Because we've seen that in cases where we've been muscled, like you put it, we've taken action really swiftly. I wish that would happen with other cases such as the Maina one we've just talked about.
Unfortunately, those high crimes are crimes that the people who would ordinarily muscle us benefit from. The money that Maina is alleged to have stolen is not in the shores of Nigeria. It's sitting in a bank somewhere, right? The monies that the bigwigs and the politicians steal do not stay in this economy. They boost other economies. Even when they are caught, we all know about the Abacha loot, the gift that keeps on giving, right? Every now and then the Swiss authorities will throw you a bone, right? So they don't have the incentive to do that. They are pursuing this one because it affects their citizens. Now, I wish somebody would take up the fight for us.
Besides, for government office holders who currently hold office, some enjoy some level of immunity due to the sort of office or the nature of the office they occupy. For instance, governors.
I have my opinions on that. That's a fact, yes. But again, that's one of the structural defects that we have. The whole concept of immunity, enjoying immunity while in office, is immunity against civil action, so that it doesn't become an impediment to you discharging the duties of office. No immunity should be offered somebody on criminal issues, right? So it's an anomaly that we do that here.
Thank you.
Ifeanyi from Iba says, how did Maina's name vanish from the watch list despite the humongous allegation on his neck? Nigeria hailed the He goes on to say, good job by the collaboration of FBI and EFCC. I hope the FBI can also help us out to go after corrupt public officials,
Don't
because
hold your breath.
that is the starting point. Mihai says on Mina's case, that is what has been going on in Nigerian political arena. Once your own is in the corridors of power, the sinner becomes a saint. Corruption has enveloped the country's space. Thank you, Ihani. And MI from Akoka sent in this one. It says the curious case of Mena. From being reinstated and promoted, he gets the perks and full compliments of security aid. Corruption in Nigeria is not a person. It is a well-organized and structured system that defends high-end graft. A coup died of natural causes. Let's move on to this next story from The Guardian, and I'll come to you, Devo, for your analysis on this one. Duke, that's the former Cross River State Governor, Donald Duke, yesterday told the Federal High Court in Lagos that he would pay his 537 million naira debt to Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria in less than 12 hours. Take us through the development of this story and how perhaps the Koi House will be let go.
Perhaps, Valentine, are you a party of interest? However, I don't know why this made the headline. However, it's a case between the former crossover governor, that's Donald Duke, who was an aspirant in the last presidential election. He was owing AMCON, and by way of the bank UBA, about 537 million naira, which the AMCON legal team secured. That's their lawyers, their counsel, Juliet Reeds. They secured a judgment on August 8th to be able to take interim possession of his Duke's Ikoyi home. Now, that the court also authorized the AMCON and the UBA to also take interim possession of his funds in any accounts possible. Now, Duke did approach, in a quick move, approached the courts and pleaded that he would settle the indebtedness yesterday. Now, the story doesn't state whether he had done that or not, but the court has given him till the 11th of September, that's next week, Wednesday, to confirm that this settlement or this plea that he made would have been taken. So, like I said, I don't know why this came out, but suffice it to say that we have been dogged by the billionaire league of debtors in this country, people of high influence who were able to obtain billion naira loans for one thing or the other. And it cuts across both the political landscape as well as the private sector operators. AMCON has had the duty of actually trying to recover most of these funds. Yeah. And as they usually say, between AMCON and FIRS, that the bulk of cash had been within a few people within this country, and it's their duty to ensure that they return these funds so that other people could get a hold of them. Just like in the old story that we read about me now, it just seems as if those who took or in possession of the larger kitty or commonwealth of Nigeria seem to live a pretty good life. And that's where the confidence, the crisis of confidence comes within the country. We, those who are just hard working class earning people who live from hand to mouth, suffer the worst of Nigeria, whereas those who are within the billions, who took the billions for one reason or the other, seem to get the lighter side of it. So we're hoping that on next week, Wednesday, we will hear from the courts as to the position. If not, they've already given judgment on what is to be done.
If this was going to be paid, I mean, as we've now seen that the promise was made to be paid within 12 hours, why go through all that process or through that stress, to get to court before you decide to make that decision?
Maybe his luck struck just recently. So.
Okay. All right. The next story has a headline from this day newspaper, Budge IT. They have released a statement, a public finance data mining hub there. They've released a report saying that federal government's personnel cost rises to 2.1 trillion naira against the previously set amount of 1.8 trillion naira. Your thoughts on this story, Justin?
Budget, as usual, has done a very good job of bringing to the fore some details that ordinarily the everyday Nigerian would not have access to or bother to look at. I encourage everyone to go read this story, and it's a referendum really on this administration and its performance while in office, basically supported by the numbers. So we have in 28, it's an analysis of the 2018 budget performance. Let me just give you highlights. In 2018, we had a 54% revenue shortfall. The government targeted to raise revenue of 7.16 trillion naira, succeeded in achieving only 3.8 trillion naira. In the meantime, we have a record high debt service requirement. In other words, the amount of money required to service public debt is at an all-time high. 27% growth from 1.6 trillion in 2017 to 2 trillion in 2018. At the same time, recurrent expenditure has continued to balloon at 5.3 trillion for recurrent expenditure versus only 1.6 trillion of capex, and even that's capital expenditure, which is expenditure that fuels growth, right? So recurrent expenditure is salaries, overheads, statutory deductions, and all of that. Then capital expenditure is what you actually invest in growth, infrastructure, so roads and all of that. Yes. So we spent only 1.6 trillion on capex, but we spent 5.3 trillion on recurrent expenditure. And here's the kicker. From the 5.3 trillion that we spent on recurrent expenditure, 2 trillion naira was borrowed. So we are borrowing to pay salaries. We are borrowing to keep the country running. The future of this country is being mortgaged by the people in government. And this is not a partisan issue, because as far as I'm concerned, there's only one party in Nigeria, the ZRO, because if all the people from one party move to the other party when they happen to win power since democracy in 20 whatever, then it's the same set of people who are consuming the future of the young people of this country. And it is a big shame. These numbers are ridiculous. So you have a 50% budget deficit, i.e., the amount of money that you have to fund your budget in cash is just about 50%. The rest of it you are borrowing. Who is going to pay these loans? Number one. Number two, how are you deploying the proceeds of these loans? The money is going into a black hole. We don't see the outcome. Nigerians are in penury, and it's getting worse every day. 60% of revenue is used to service debt. That's unsustainable.
All right. Thank you
Feelings
very
against
much.
the fear of continuous borrowing and how that can be sustainable or sustained.
All right. Shola on WhatsApp says so he could pay but refused to until his house was held. That's talking about the Donald Duke story. And then Shegun says Donald Duke was earning 20 million naira a year before elections. He will pay over 500 million naira debt from his salary. Where will we get the leaders to move the nation forward? And on Twitter we have this from Abiola Eni Lolobo, who says this is a typical case of how the high and mighty can't be caught in the AFCC web. Maynard's case is just one of many this government has handled with levity. We are our own problem. Until we start treating corruption as thievery, it will still be same old story.
New Telegraph. The Inspector General of Police sat with the Southwest governors yesterday in Ibadan, and they've approved the deployment of special forces to tackle insecurity across the country. Your thoughts on this, DJ?
Well, here we have recently we've been seeing a lot of regional security campaign. Because left to me, the meat of this story is basically Southwest governors, royal fathers, IGP. That's Mohammed Abubakar Damu. They came together alongside social cultural groups, as we know, the OPC and Fenifere, and they all agree that the IGP is going to supply special forces to fight crime, supply CCTV, air surveillance, community policing, recruitment, yada yada. That's not really a point. The question is, what is going on? Why is there a regional approach to security? There's a problem. That is a huge fault line in that development, because the other day we heard Southeast governors came together and they took a position on the movement of cattle, okay, of which, yes, the Meiteala and some of the coalition of northern associations reacted to in a dangerous manner. And if you remember when I think just in the last administration, when there were lots of flashpoints around the country, the army was split thin with so many exercises and operations around the whole nation. Now people are looking at regional formation to secure them. Why is it not about Ogun and maybe what do you call it, Delta State? Why must it take a regional look and feel? And this is dangerous for our socio-cultural, geopolitical development, because at the end of the day, it means that you're protecting your own. When this becomes the national narrative, and that's not to say that it isn't, there's a problem. Nigeria is becoming polarized. Things are taking ethnic and religious dimensions in terms of resolution. That's not the way the founding fathers of this nation built this country. Yes, there's a debate. We were forced into it. Amalgamation. Please help me with that word.
Amalgamation.
But we cannot be talking to ourselves like this. I cannot look at the beautiful Aya and tell her that, well, I can't really talk to you because you are from where?
Lagos State.
The Southwest. I am from the East. We need to keep our distance. Therefore, we can't be going in this direction. So it calls again for the Constitutional Conference. It calls for us to talk to ourselves, the restructuring. How do we want to live as a nation? Let's raise the hornet's nest tonight or this morning.
Could your view be perceived as being paranoid in saying that
Paranoid
this is peculiar to security in the sense that, well, hold on, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I mean, the Inspector General of Police is the one who called for this. He assembled this meeting, so to speak, and he's the he could be perceived as the head of the security, national security, in terms of this kind of collaboration.
To a large extent, aside from the political sensitivities and precipitants of the issue, there is also the issue of the country is just too large to run a central police force, right? And the funding becomes a problem when you look at it from that perspective. How do you fund a federal police force from the federal policy? It would actually be a lot more efficient if the states who have security votes have an input. So I think that's why you see the IGP leaning towards this regional arrangement, because for him, I dare say, it's probably a funding issue. So if you guys are putting the money on the table, then I will collaborate with you to set up an architecture that works for you. So that's another angle to look at it from.
Okay, great angle. Thank you very much, Justin. Thanks, Divo, as well. Divo, I'll stay with you for this. But before then, let's take a few comments. We have someone with current expenditure. And
David from VI says, it's just so sad. Recurrent expenditure keeps rising. High-class criminals keep getting away with crimes. I hope we all start addressing corruption in our little spaces. It's just got to start somewhere. Ike from Isolo says, okay, thank you very much, Ike. Benga says, the future generation will pay these debts. While in other countries, they are saving for the future. Nigerian leaders are looting and piling up debts for future generations. Nothing new, just Nigeria. And Kingdom says the regional approach to security could be that the VP is from the West.
this is just, it just alludes to what Divo just said now. And I don't know why Justin was surprised because I said I'm from Lagos State. People come from Lagos State. Thank you. All right, let's go on to our next story. Divo, I'll come to you for this. How Nigeria loses over 1 trillion naira to defective building code. Now, The Guardian has this report. It's quite a lengthy report, and it just talks about the losses that we incur based on the poor or outdated building code that's in Nigeria. It talks about the previous building collapses, gives some statistics as well. But Divo, please give us details of this story.
Okay, let's crunch the story again.
Let's crunch it.
Now, basically, yes, losses have been coming with the implementation of the building code, which has been seen as defective because we're still operating on the one that the colonial masters gave us. So basically, it's outdated. Most of the money is being spent on funds are being wasted on rescue operations, of which we know so many collapses have taken place around the nation. Thinking back as some of the popular ones like the synagogue collapse, most of the weekly or even perennial collapse that take place in Lagos Island and in some of the other markets that we know nationwide. Now, long and short, right? The professionals behind this, that's the architects, the quantity surveyors, the builders, the construction industry experts have been bedeviled by this weak cold. And I think it's not so much of the practitioners, it's more from the side of regulation.
Yes.
And this is where we say government operating while private sector the government regulates while the private sector should operate. There's been weakness in terms of regulation. That's why the building code has not even addressed or even been reviewed. Till date, the position that the Lagos state government took, that's in terms of Lagos, in terms of doing a review on the buildings, I wouldn't call it a knee-jerk reaction, but it's an action late in the day. It's meant to actually be pivoted on the Ministry of Works and Housing. Now, they're meant to establish a building code which can further be escalated at the state level. Now, if there's no enforcement is weak, and this is when we talk about corruption and how it eats up and destroys proper governance. At the end of the day, anybody can build. People build anyhow. People build as they like. People don't care about town planning and the laws that guide buildings. And I remember in Port Harcourt those days, you would see a house, 5 houses right next to each other in an awkward dimension simply because there was no form of town planning taking place. Whether they used the right bricks or the right resistance materials, quantity of sand, we don't know. Even children these days do not understand how to make a cement block. In those days, everybody knew the right quantities to make a cement block.
In school.
Yes.
Now, let me ask a question. I know you've moved on to enforcement of building codes, but in this report, you actually talked about how outdated it is and the fact that it's not localized. So we adopted it from the West and we haven't actually modified it since then. And so there is a problem already. So even if we adhere to the current building code, it's not even fit.
No, I would question. I would dare say if they complied with the current building code, which is an outdated one, you would still save a lot of some of these losses. What has happened is that with time, the building code has been corrupted. When I say corrupted, it has not been adhered to. People who are meant to build maybe just 2 stories within a certain zone are building 7 stories. Where you're supposed to mix 2 bags of concrete and 5 bags of sand, you're mixing 1 bag of concrete with 20 bags of sand. At the end of the day, which house will actually stand? So it is an endemic problem. There's still many lives going to be lost simply because houses have been built out of the code. So I am charging the professionals to come together and hold government accountable in this realm. There are people that work in those ministries and those agencies to ensure that regulation.
Taiwo Fomikeja says, I'm an architect presently preparing a paper on building collapse in Lagos.
Right.
The bane is from the people, that's the end users. There are laws in place, we don't follow them. So.
No, that's the point. The laws have been there, but they haven't been enforced. They haven't been regulated so that people comply at the end of the day.
All right.
Emeka from Amor says, good morning. The whole saga on breach of contracts left, right, and center indicates 3 major things: ineptitude, irresponsibility, and outright corruption. It's unfortunate that it's now that it's coming back to bite us in the behind. I fear for our future.
Right, very quickly, the Mambila project, Nigeria risks another $2.3 billion fine. We haven't yet, come to grasps with the British Commercial Court awarding $9.6 billion against us in favor of Process and Industrial Development Company in a botched gas processing deal. Now, Mambila project, what's going on, please?
It's the same. Obviously, Mambila required energy, and this was meant to come through a French company that was meant to deliver the gas-powered turbine. However, this fine is going to come at 2.3 billion. The truth is this: what we did in the secret is now coming out to haunt us, and it's not just some of these high-powered infrastructure deals. When Obi Ezekwesili was screaming public procurement. Madam Due Process. This was what it was about. Many deals had been signed, given away, and many people don't even know about. And at the end of the day, because we've done them in conjunction with foreign companies, we think like ostriches that we're operating in isolation, and then the Gist would. I mean, take a look at the PIDB bill. That was a what do you call them again? A shell company. A shell company having that weight of influence on us. Yet our government didn't see through that, or did not do the proper probity to ensure that things were in place. So I'm hoping that that the government can look at this critically to ensure that they can iron it out at the end of the day. Corruption does sting, and it may not sting those who committed it. It might sting posterity. That's you and me and our children at the end of the day.
Thank you very much, Ivo. Thanks a lot, Justin, as well. Thanks to everyone who sent in comments this morning. We continue the conversation in more detail at 9 o'clock during Lagos Talks 981. We take one of the topical headline from this morning, and we open the phone lines at that time, so please stay tuned. But if you want to follow Devo, it's at Devo Okore on Twitter, and Justin is at Justin EJ on Twitter. Collectively follow us at Smooth 981 FM on Twitter. Use the hashtag Freshly Pressed 981. Coming up next, we have the Grapevine 981. We will be having a guest with us in the studio reviewing songs and, of course, some entertainment gists as well. Stay tuned.
These headlines just depressed me, honestly.
Yeah, someone actually said, are you saying we don't have any positive news headlines?
We do.
Somebody said that.
Come, I thought we